Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for a session. We're going to be talking about what's new as GKE turns 5. I'm Drew Bradstock, product leader for GKE, and joining me today is Alex Zakonov, engineering director for GKE. Now, it's pretty amazing to think that we're celebrating GKE's 5th birthday today. Now, I know we may have promised cake, but unfortunately, that cake is a lie, and what you're going to have to put up with is just this virtual version. Alex and I had talked about whether it was a good idea to sing happy birthday to GKE in this session, but thankfully, due to the fact we're both awful singers, we declined. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Alex.
Welcome. Today is an amazing day for us, and we celebrate that together with all our customers. Customers who use GKE to scale their applications to meet huge demands of Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Customers who use GKE to run their banking and financial applications. Customers who use GKE to do medical research or learn how to optimize self-driving cars. That's an amazing day for us. The journey towards that day is started way in the past. It goes back to 2006, when Google open sourced the modern concept of Linux containers. That's where we started. In 2012, Google was ready to take the next step and to start the work on bringing container management at scale and all experience that Google internally had with the technology to the outside world. And in 2014, Kubernetes was unveiled, setting the new standard on what it means to run cloud-native infrastructure and cloud-native applications. A year later, in August 2015, GKE was born, making it simple and available for customers to run Kubernetes clusters. Customers loved the experience with GKE and Kubernetes, but they told us that it's not enough. They told that the gap from a legacy on-prem applications to cloud-native applications running in a modern cloud is too big, that they need help on that journey. And we listened to them. And in 2018, we announced GKE on-prem, bringing the power of GKE to customer data centers and allowing them to modernize in place. Customers told us repeatedly that GKE is a gold standard, and they need to make sure that they can leverage the gold standard no matter where they run. And this year, we announced GKE on AWS, bringing GKE power to multi-cloud customers who want to have consistent, high-quality Kubernetes experience across on-prem and multi-cloud. With that, we have amazing platform, but it's only start of the journey. There is way more to do. And if we're looking on the next 5 years, we see a world where every workload will run on top of containers and on top of Kubernetes, no matter if it's batch workload or real time, no matter if it's a legacy workload or modern cloud-native application. And that's a high demand that we need to meet, making sure that we have reliable, secure, and scalable platform to run any type of workload. So, how are we going to meet that demand? First, Google continues heavily invest in open source Kubernetes, helping with scale, security, and reliability of Kubernetes. Google is a #1 contributor, out investing all other major cloud providers, as well as other companies that support Kubernetes distributions. Google funds the infrastructure for Kubernetes development. Kubernetes is built and distributed on GKE itself, and all Kubernetes testing is run on GKE. With all that, Kubernetes is still hard. Kubernetes is extremely powerful platform. That power comes with responsibility. And no offense to Kelsey, but Kubernetes shouldn't have to be the hard way. And huge thank you to Kelsey and our DevRel team for bringing all the feedback on what we need to simplify in Kubernetes. And GKE is our answer to simplifying Kubernetes. With GKE, we take complexity of Kubernetes and we're shifting it from being customer responsibility to be Google's responsibility. With GKE, Google SRE team is responsible for operating GKE clusters in highly reliable and scalable way. Google security team is responsible for analyzing and addressing all security threats across the full stack, starting from GKE Kubernetes itself, going to Linux, and going even to language itself, which is Go. Yes, and Google development team is responsible for taking all the knowledge that we get from running millions of workloads on top of containers and converting it in a set of new functionality and innovation for our customers. One concrete example of that innovation is what we're doing with auto-scaling functionality. Google constantly watches internal and external workloads running on top of containers and builds machine learning predictable models on how to scale workloads in the most efficient way. And we bring that knowledge, that intelligence to our customers. GKE allows you automatically scale infrastructure, supporting horizontal node auto-scaling, as well as dynamically scale your workloads, supporting both horizontal pod auto-scaling as well as vertical pod auto-scaling, making sure that your workloads run efficiently and can meet high-scale demands. A concrete example of that is our partnership with Tokopedia, a major Indonesian retailer that needs to meet high-scale requirements of their peak retail season. Tokopedia partnered with Google to optimize their environment, to make sure that on one side, they can run in a cost-effective way, but on the other side, when their customer traffic increases, they can dynamically meet those demands. Another major dimension is scale. As new major workloads move to containers in Kubernetes, the demand for scale increases. This year, GKE announced 15,000 node support for Kubernetes clusters running on top of GKE. And that was done in a partnership with our top customers, such as Bayer's Crop Science, that uses GKE to run genotype analysis, analyzing 15 billion genotypes per hour, as well as Twitter, who's using GKE to power real-time communication platform across the world. Please attend Twitter session to learn more about how Twitter is using GKE to move the Mesos and Aurora workloads and mega clusters to Kubernetes and GKE clusters. Another interesting use case is gaming, where GKE is partnered with Phoenix Labs. With gaming applications, whenever you launch a new title, it's extremely hard, almost impossible, to predict exact scale that you will need. As a result, in many cases, you need to design almost for ultimate scalability. Phoenix Labs partnered with Google and GKE team around launch of the new title. We designed the infrastructure to make sure that it will meet the scaling needs, as well as partnered with them on reviewing best practices for their application layer. As a result of that, whenever a new title was launched, and on the first week, number of gamers crossed 4 million gamers, we are able to meet those demands without glitch. Next, we are taking all that co-innovation with our top customers and bringing it to the next wave of our customers. And Drew will talk more about that.
Thanks, Alex. It's great to see that level of partnership with our customers, because that has been the heart of GKE. If we go way back to the very beginning, the first phase of GKE and Kubernetes was really around the builders. These are companies who put a heavy engine investment and their own time into building new core functionality into Kubernetes, and we're able to leverage that through GKE. From there, we move to the next phase, which is the cloud scalers. That's where great firms such as Shopify and Spotify work with Google and use GKE to be able to obtain that huge, massive global scale they need to grow their businesses to where they are in 2020. From there, we've entered a very different phase of Kubernetes. This is where the previous companies were very cloud native, started in the cloud and grew in the cloud. Instead, we're working with a far larger number of customers who are actually moving from on-prem or moving from VMware into containers. And the needs of these customers, what many of you need, is very different from the customers at the beginning. Instead, they're looking for a lot more simplicity. Rather than having 50 different options to do something in full choice, they want to have it a lot more automated. They want it more opinionated, and they want more help from Google, so they're not having to build it themselves. And this is where we get to the next phase of Kubernetes adoption and where we're really taking GKE. This is the wide-scale adoption of Kubernetes across enterprises, just like Alex mentioned. And what they're really looking for is to be able to take all the learnings Google has across its massive fleet of both internal systems as well as GKE as a whole globally, and use that to be able to automate much of what they do to run the system so they don't have to worry about it. Now, a great example of this change is actually what we've seen with the support of Windows. Previously, and for a long time, GKE was just Linux. And this is great, it allowed great scale, but the challenge was much of a business's workloads, especially those that didn't start in the cloud, were trapped on Windows servers and VMware, which made that modernization journey a lot easier. By supporting Windows as a first-class citizen and having it fully GA and GKE, it's really opened up a lot of the migration to the cloud of these works and also consolidation onto Kubernetes clusters. Hand in hand with that, though, it's not just Kubernetes support, it's helped to be able to migrate those VM-based apps into containers, which can be quite a struggle. This is where Migrate for Anthos, which also works great for Migrate with GKE, such that you don't need Anthos, to help you in an automated fashion move your applications from VM containers, be it in the cloud or on-prem, into GKE. This takes a lot of the risk, a lot of the time, and a lot of the difficulty, and instead the tooling does it for you, which can greatly ramp up your journey into GKE. Now from there, we need to make the entire thing simple. One of the things I get often from customers is, hey, we're on Kubernetes. And it's almost an implied question mark. So what do you go from there? Because that first step of creating a cluster can be quite difficult. And that's been a huge amount of our investment over the past year and a half, is to simplify that experience. Take creating the cluster for the first time and automate away much of what you'd normally be doing. So rather than having to take 20 minutes and many, many steps, instead, you can be live in your first Kubernetes cluster in only minutes. And this really shifts Kubernetes from the hard way. And I personally learned from Kelsey Hightower's great book and went through that lab experience. So thank you, Kelsey. But honestly, I don't want many large enterprises want to have to do that. They instead want to be able to do this smoothly so they can go from their first dev cluster to their first production cluster to their second production cluster to their third and so on very smoothly without all this additional effort for each one. And that's where GKE really stands out. And you'll continue to see more and more simplification and GKE doing more and more of Kubernetes so you have to do less. Now, just like your initial experience shouldn't be hard, day two operations shouldn't be scary, but unfortunately they are for many people. This means, how do you keep up with patching? How do you handle upgrades, be it for stateless or stateful workloads? How do you handle security or issues that pop up at the last minute? This can often be a very time-consuming initiative that can slow down those full production rollouts. That's why specifically we've made a very strong investment on this and leveraging what we've done with our SRE teams and EngProd to look across the entire fleet to simplify things for you. Great example of this is release channels. What this allows you to do is pick a GA version of Kubernetes, so rapid, regular, and stable are all GA, and decide based on your risk profile or your particular workload's risk profile, what version do you want. Now, what I mean by this is not everyone wants to be bleeding edge, and not everyone wants to be back a couple releases. So if you've got a workload that can never afford to be going down, you'd like a much longer soak time of this version of Kubernetes out in the wild for a long period, stable is the best bet for you. But if you want something a little more current, you can use regular. And if you want the latest and greatest of Kubernetes, and we certify the newest version out in OSS very quickly, you can choose rapid. Now, the cool thing about this is as GKE certifies the next version in rapid, regular, stable, we move it up for you and automatically do the upgrades. And this is huge because it takes that risk, takes all the security patching, takes all the testing out of your hands and allows us to do it, and also look across the entire fleet so you benefit from that as well. And that makes day two a lot simpler and a lot more stable no matter who you are. Really good example of this is actually the work that Faceit did with us. And Faceit runs a massive platform for online multiplayer games. And before they took advantage of surge upgrades, they were spending about 2 weeks upgrading their environments. For any of you who lived through this, you know how scary upgrades can be it databases or be it Kubernetes, and be able to reduce the risk and leverage automated and tested tools allowed Faceit to go from that 2 weeks to less than a day. The important thing for this is less risk, and also it freed up their team to work on other tasks rather than focusing on upgrades and building all their own scripts, which over time can be brittle, and that's not where you want your best engineers and your platform team to focus on. Now, if you look at where we're going, we're really just getting started. As we've spoken about, a heavy focus for GKE has been taking the complexity of Kubernetes and greatly simplifying it. But that's not the only thing we're doing. If you look at scaling, traditionally people talk about how far they can go. And what's been key for that, as Alex spoke about, is actually the fact that it was done in partnership with customers like Bear and Twitter. So we're running real workloads and seeing what was happening with them and testing all parts of GKE such we can scale at small workloads, large workloads, or any combination of what you can throw at us. Now, the other side of this coin is how do we actually optimize costs? It's great if you can scale up and handle that maximum capacity at any time, but truly you want to be able to scale down to meet the needs of your business as well, to free up compute and network costs, to be able to really save you money. And this is where the team that's doing this has focused on that scale down and optimizing for costs. This can be with efficient VMs, a new offering for GCP that brings down your overall compute cost, where GK can do that certification and testing ahead so that you don't have to, or working in partnership with us to take a workload that completely changes globally depending on time of day, which we actually do with OpenX. And just like the session with Twitter, there's a really great one with OpenX on what they did to handle a global advertising application and control costs at the same time. Now, along with that, there continues to be a lot of investment in security. This is key. This is something you want someone with a global fleet to be taking responsibility for and constantly looking, hardening your application for you rather than worrying about it. So I think as you look at Kubernetes, really our innovation is just getting started, and I'd love to turn it over to Alex Zakonov now.
Thank you, Drew. Innovation at the core of Google DNA. And we had amazing 5 years of innovation, and we're looking for the next 5 years of bringing more innovation to you, the customers. Please stay tuned for additional announcements from us in the Q4 this year, and next year letting you to simplify your operation, to scale your workloads, to run efficiently, as well as making sure that all your enterprise security needs and compliance is met. Thank you.